At 6 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, 3 HOA board members and matching windbreakers tried to tow my dock like it was an illegally parked. The tow guy stared at the water for a long moment, then at his truck, then back at the water, clearly doing mental calculations about the laws of physics. He shrugged and asked where exactly he was supposed to hook the chain. "To the American dream," I said with a straight face, holding up my phone to film the whole ridiculous scene. Behind them stood our HOA president Trina Culpepper, waving a clipboard like a battle standard and yelling loud enough to wake the fish in the next county. "By authority of Cypress Hollow Covenants, Section Infinity," she announced with the confidence of someone who had clearly never read an actual legal document in her entire life. I noticed she was also wearing a reflective safety vest, as if that somehow made this operation official. The sheriff's boat idled about 50 feet away. The deputy inside sipping coffee and waiting for someone to do something spectacularly dumb. I had a feeling it wouldn't be me. My name is Mason Bellamy, and I'm an IT guy whose favorite hobby has always been minding my own business. 2 years ago, I bought a condemned $5 lake shack on Gullbone Lake, a mosquito-fed ripple just outside the town of Cypress Hollow. The price wasn't a typo. The seller desperately wanted out of a tax nightmare, and all I wanted was quiet water and an electrical outlet that didn't hiss at me when I plugged something in. The property had been sitting vacant for 3 years, slowly becoming one with nature. The roof leaked in 17 places I counted personally. The dock listed to port like a sinking ship, and the entire structure smelled like wet dog and regret. But it was mine. It was waterfront, and it was quiet. The HOA laughed when they heard about the purchase. Actually laughed out loud at their monthly meeting. According to the minutes I later obtained, Trina sent me a welcome packet that included a coupon for 1 free reality check and a passive-aggressive note suggesting I review their architectural guidelines, which ran to 47 pages of single-space requirements about mailbox fonts and acceptable shades of beige. I thought it was funny at the time. I renovated slowly, doing most of the work myself on weekends. New wiring, patched roof, reinforced dock. Nothing fancy, just making it livable. Then tech money hit the region like a tidal wave. 3 major companies opened satellite offices within 30 miles. A scenic byway was designated by the state, bringing tourist traffic. Property values tripled, then tripled again. Suddenly, my shack with personality disorders appraised at $5 million thanks to the pristine shoreline, 200 feet of lake frontage, and those legacy launch rights that predated modern zoning. That's when the tone changed from laughter to paperwork, from mockery to predatory interest. Trina started showing up at my property line with a surveyor's wheel, taking photographs, making notes on her ever-present clipboard. Trina began sprinkling violations like confetti at a parade. First came unapproved rustic aesthetic. It was cedar siding, naturally weathered and beautiful, the kind of thing you'd see in an architectural magazine. The violation notice included a paint chip sample of approved beige number 7. Then she cited me for dock too joyful. Her actual words typed on official HOA letterhead. My dock floated peacefully on the water, bothering absolutely no one except apparently Trina's sense of order. Next was kayak color clashes with community palette. The kayak was blue, the same color as the water it floated on. She wanted me to repaint it taupe. She installed a motion-activated camera facing my porch, claiming it was for traffic studies on a road where maybe 3 cars pass per day. The camera had night vision and pointed directly at my front door. She trespassed onto my property to measure my grass with a quilting ruler, crouching in my yard like some deranged lawn detective, documenting that my grass was 3 1/8 inch tall instead of the required 3 in exactly. She left violation notices tucked into my door at odd hours. She sent certified letters, return receipt requested, complaining about my wind chimes being non-regulation, my firewood stack being visible from the road, and my bird feeder attracting unapproved species of birds. When none of that scared me off, she escalated dramatically. She popped a special assessment for a $120,000 heritage pergola that would supposedly beautify our shared shoreline. The assessment divided equally among all homeowners meant I'd owe $22,000 for a structure I didn't want on property I didn't share. Tiny problem with her plan. My shoreline wasn't shared. My parcel predated the HOA by 40 years and sat outside its jurisdiction like a stubborn barnacle clinging to a rock. My deed clearly showed I owned to the high water mark, and my property had been grandfathered in when the HOA formed in 1983. I told her as politely as I could manage given my rising blood pressure that her covenants stopped at my old property marker stump, and she had no authority over my land whatsoever. She smiled at me with cold eyes and said we'd see about that. Trina filed something she called an annexation by clarification with the county recorder. It wasn't a real legal instrument, just words she made up that sounded official. Stapled to it was a forged quitclaim deed that claimed to transfer my dock boathouse and what she termed miscellaneous water features to the HOA. The document looked professional at first glance with official-looking seals and stamps. The notary stamp on the document belonged to her cousin, who had awkwardly moved to Arizona in 2019 and taken his official stamp with him. When I called the county to verify, they confirmed the stamp was registered but inactive, and the notary himself was shocked when they contacted him. She mailed several lenders a notice of lien and intent to foreclose using HOA letterhead and some statutes she clearly copy-pasted from a Florida homeowner blog that didn't even apply in our state. She claimed I owed $38,000 in back assessments, late fees, and legal costs for a property that had never been part of the HOA. My mortgage company called me in a panic. My insurance agent called asking questions. Then she cut the power to my shack with a bolt cutter at 2 o'clock in the morning, announcing it was for an emergency inspection, though she later claimed in writing it was punishment for noncompliance with her fake assessments. That's where she crossed from annoying to criminal. The sheriff came out to investigate the power line cutting and filed a vandalism report. So did the state attorney general's real estate fraud unit after I sent them copies of the forged documents. After Trina emailed me a ransom-style settlement demand over her personal Gmail account, writing that I could make this all go away for just $250,000. The federal authorities started sniffing around for wire fraud and mail fraud charges. Using the internet and the mail system to commit fraud makes it federal. The FBI doesn't have a sense of humor about that kind of thing. The quiet lake got very, very crowded with law enforcement very quickly. Unmarked sedans parked on the street. Agents in polo shirts took photographs. Trina kept showing up anyway, clipboard in hand, seemingly oblivious to the hole she was digging. I had already done my homework long before any of this escalated. My title included a riparian easement carved into county records way back in 1968. And there was a survey monument buried under the lilac bushes that marked my property line like a microphone drop. My lawyer filed for a temporary restraining order, a quiet title action, and an anti-slap motion to dismiss the nuisance suits Trina had machine-gunned at me. The county clerk voided the fake annexation by clarification with the kind of genuine laughter that triggers asthma attacks. Deputies personally returned my power tools that Trina had confiscated, and the Attorney General froze the HOA's entire operating account pending a full investigation. The tow company sent me an apology basket filled with artisanal bungee cords and a handwritten note. At the emergency hearing, Trina arrived wearing a blazer the color of righteous fury and attempted to deliver a PowerPoint presentation titled The Greater Good. She brought 3 full binders of documentation, color-coded tabs, and a laser pointer she kept clicking nervously. Slide number 1 was a map of the neighborhood with my property highlighted in red like a tumor. Slide number 2 was just my Zillow estimate enlarged, like a wanted poster at a post office, with a $5 million figure circled multiple times in red marker. She argued passionately that my property value was making everyone else's taxes go up, and that the HOA had a duty to acquire my land for community benefit. She used the phrase eminent domain incorrectly at least 4 times. My attorney sat quietly, taking notes, occasionally glancing at me with the slightest hint of a smile. When Trina finally finished her presentation after 20 minutes of circular logic and appeals to community harmony, my attorney stood up and calmly plugged in a jump drive labeled receipts in neat block letters. The evidence included time-stamped Ring doorbell footage of Trina trespassing on my property at least a dozen times, often at night, sometimes with a flashlight, once with what appeared to be spray paint, which he later used to mark my property line incorrectly. There were side-by-side comparisons of notary signatures that clearly didn't match, blown up on the screen, where even the judge could see the different handwriting styles. There were bank records showing the HOA's operating account being used for her personal legal fees. There were screenshots from the HOA group chat where she had typed, "If we own the dock, we own the man," followed by laughing emojis. Another message read, "Mason doesn't know we can just take it. Precedent doesn't matter if we act fast." Another said, "My lawyer cousin says possession is 9/10 and nobody checks county records anyway." The courtroom went so quiet you could hear the bass chewing gum lose its flavor. The judge stared at the screen for a long moment, removed his glasses, cleaned them slowly, put them back on, and looked at Trina with an expression that could freeze lava. He asked her attorney if he had any explanation for the evidence. Her attorney, visibly pale, said he'd been unaware of most of these facts and requested a moment to consult with his client. Trina whispered urgently to him. He shook his head. She whispered more urgently. He started packing his briefcase. The judge voided every single fake lien she'd filed. He sanctioned the HOA with substantial financial penalties. He referred Trina to the district attorney for forgery, recording false instruments, and attempted grand theft. Then the judge did something absolutely beautiful. He appointed a receiver to run the HOA, ordered mandatory refunds of all bogus assessments to every homeowner she'd scammed, and granted me attorney's fees, treble damages, and the legal right to host an annual dock party. I decided to call Section Infinity. Trina's face went from red to white to a shade of gray I'd never seen on a living person. Trina was sentenced to 400 hours of community service scraping zebra mussels off public piers, while wearing a neon yellow vest that read, "Ask me about deeds" in bold black letters. The judge specified that the service must be completed on weekends, when maximum public visibility was guaranteed. She was also fined $15,000 payable immediately, with an additional $23,000 in restitution to homeowners she'd fraudulently assessed over the years. The judge added a permanent restraining order preventing her from coming within 500 feet of my property. She was permanently removed from the HOA board and barred from serving on any homeowner association board in the state for 10 years. The criminal charges for forgery and filing false instruments would be handled separately by the district attorney with potential jail time of up to 3 years if convicted. As the judge read the sentence, methodically listing each consequence in his measured voice, Trina stood there trembling with her mouth hanging open, unable to form a single word in her defense. Her face went through a spectrum of colors from red to white to a shade of gray I'd never seen on a living person. Her hand shook so badly that she dropped her clipboard, papers scattering across the courtroom floor. She tried to speak twice, but only managed a strangled sound. Her lawyer quietly packed up his briefcase, handed her a business card for a criminal defense attorney, and left the courtroom without looking back. She stood alone at the defendant's table, staring at the judge in complete disbelief, as if she couldn't comprehend that her actions had consequences, that authority didn't protect her from the law, that her clipboard and her covenants meant nothing when weighed against actual justice.